Good afternoon. My name is Ike Hecht. I am the CEO at WikiTech. WikiTech is a MediaWiki focused business. We do everything MediaWiki. So if any of you need custom development, call me. If your version upgrades are painful, so put the pain on us. We're used to it. Call me. All right. In my role at WikiTech, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. So I've been part of both communities that I'm going to be talking about now. The open source community, obviously, but also knowledge management, because we create knowledge management systems, improve them, customize them for businesses. And this presentation is about combining those two, lessons from the open source model that can be applied to knowledge management and improve collaboration within a company. The truth is that open source adoption is kind of new. Some of you don't remember the roots in the 80s. I don't really either. But, there was Linux really only, anybody even know when Linux started? 91. 91. I remember 91. All right? It wasn't that long ago. And that's literally the start, right? And in the early days, there was just a bunch of tech geeks, like most of us, academics, like some of us, and businesses were very skeptical of the whole idea. It was a radical new concept. In 2000s, there was a little bit of a shift. We had Linux and Apache taking off. Google, Amazon jumped in. IBM dropped $1 billion on Linux by 2001. Why? Well, for businesses, the things they were interested in, it was cheap, it was flexible, and there was no vendor lock-in. And in the 2010s was really where the boom was. We had cloud with Kubernetes, big data, and even Microsoft decided to get on board open sourcing VS Code, thank you. And GitHub made collaboration on these things very easy. Now, you'd really have to be determined to not use open source to be a company that doesn't use it. Over 90% of companies use open source software, and it's not just the code that I want to focus on, it's the principles. Why is it that open source has basically taken over the world? What can we learn from it? How can we improve knowledge management using it? Remember these 4 principles, because those are going to be repeated throughout the presentation. Principles are transparency. Everything that happens in open source is open. Everybody can see who edited, and everybody can see what they did. Peer review. Everybody's kind of equal, and we'll get to that a little bit more also, but because of that, if you make a change, then you can't really just merge it in yourself. You can't just change the code yourself in the vast majority of open source projects. It's got to be reviewed by somebody else. That doesn't mean that they're any better than you. They're a peer, and they'll take a look at it and make sure that it meets quality. They'll give you feedback, and usually, if there's a problem with your code, you're very interested in knowing about that. It's not good to take it personally. Distributed contribution, so it takes inputs from many people, and it could be hundreds, it could be even millions of people, as we'll see, and therefore, that quality actually goes up, and the quantity goes up. Community governance is shared rules and decisions. They're usually in this model. There's no dictator, for the most part, in these projects. There's, to some extent, there's always going to be some leadership, but there's shared rules, and generally, it's in the incentive of the leaders to give as much power as they can to the contributors, because they want to attract contributors. So let's keep those lessons in mind. And when we do that, these principles foster collaboration and innovation. That's something that businesses are very interested in. And I'll ask you guys a question. I'm happy to bring you the mic, if that's okay. What's one way your team shares knowledge, and is it open or restricted? You could pick any example, but any tool. There's lots of areas of knowledge in a business. If you don't want to share, that's okay, but if you'd like to give us any example of either open or restricted knowledge within your business, personal life, anything else? Anybody? Okay.
We have a MediaWiki that we call Confluence. The URL for it is Confluence, and we put everything on Confluence, but it's a MediaWiki installation, and that's how we do our knowledge sharing internally.
And that's open.
Who's we?
Within the staff.
Who's we?
At wiki.gg.
At wiki.gg, okay. I like it. All right, next. Some case studies from the open source community, and this is not really just software, as we'll see. Linux, Wikipedia, Stack Overflow. Remember those 4 principles. Linux is an obvious example here. Linux is huge. It wasn't always huge. I remember when next year was always going to be the year of Linux. It's been the year of Linux. Linux now powers 100% of the world's top 500 supercomputers. That's a significant percentage. Servers, it powers 96.3% of the top 1 million web servers, also significant. And it powers around 3/4 of mobile devices around the world. You probably are using Linux multiple times during the day, and you don't even know it. I would say that's a successful open source model. How does it work? Well, the transparency, it's open source, it's got the maintainer checks, it's got global developers and reviews that go through patches. The governance is also very interesting for a different time. But the bottom line is, like any open source piece of software, Linux thrives on open collaboration. Wikipedia, we're familiar with it. I'm not talking about MediaWiki, I'm talking about the encyclopedia itself. I mean, I remember having an encyclopedia on the shelf, and it had maybe a few thousand articles in there, and it was pretty good. There are almost 65 million articles across all Wikipedias, and in only the English Wikipedia, there have been around 12 million contributors, 100,000 currently active editors, 130 billion page views over the last year. I would call that a success as well. How does that happen? Well, there's public edits. Every single edit to Wikipedia can be seen by anybody. Editor oversight, there's no official editors, but everybody's a peer, and everybody can oversee what you're doing, and there's a little bit of governance in there, but people all around the world, there's no way in the world that could have happened. I mean, think about how many people would contribute to a proprietary encyclopedia, or have. You're not going to get 12 million contributors unless you're using the open source model, and you're not going to get 65 million articles unless you're using this model. Stack Overflow, something some of us are familiar with. It's basically a Q&A site for techies. So there are over 23 million registered users, over 24 million questions, and 35 million answers. How do they implement those 4 parts? So for the transparency, public answers, everybody can see who posted something and what they said. Peer review, it's very interesting because it's not just people commenting, but also simply upvoting is a form of peer review and a form of also getting contributions from the community. And the community governance is the content is all community driven. Those are our 3 models from the open source world. Those are the ones we would like to imitate. And we'd like to move them into business. So think about your own company's knowledge sharing and how you can get some lessons from those. From Wikipedia, internal wikis, obviously. So that's my specialty, but it's an excellent way to run your knowledge management. I've spoken about that in the past. Linux could be used for cross-department collaboration, because even if you have internal wikis, they may be very siloed, and it would be better not to have them siloed if you can. Stack Overflow would be Q&A-driven knowledge bases. You can use Stack Overflow in your business, but that would be another example of the open source model being brought to businesses. So, applying it to those principles. So if you want transparency in your business, and you do, so open knowledge repositories. Everybody can see what everybody's knowledge is. Now, of course, you may not want that for all of your knowledge. But instead of the default being, let's hide everything, the default should be, let everything be open. And then when we have a really good reason, we'll close up only what needs to be closed. Peer review, you can have edit and approval workflows. You could also not. You could just have it open and then everybody can edit and then everybody's peer reviewing everyone else. But if you like managers, you want the managers to approve everything they can. For distributed contribution, when you have this model and you encourage everybody to contribute, then they will, and they do. And for community governance, this is hard, depending on the business's culture, but actually having the wiki can change the culture. Lightweight rules. Give people a little bit of power. Let them decide what they want in their knowledge, and let them decide even in how to run the business. Having this model in a business, it's not really just about knowledge management. It's about a culture of sharing, and it's a culture of community governance. At Wikitech, we have a policy, and it says that anybody can propose a policy. They just go onto the wiki, they write a policy, and we have peer review, they post it. Here's my proposed policy. If nobody objects, that's the policy. And we encourage people to improve it, comment on it, and what comes out is a much better policy than something that I could come up with on my own. Now, of course, I reserve the right to change all policies at any time, but I don't because it's a better policy than I'd come up with. It came from everybody at Wikitech. So an example, we spoke about centralized knowledge. So a tech firm uses a wiki to centralize project knowledge across departments with open edits and peer reviews. Tech firms are very well suited for adopting this model. First of all, most of them are already open source contributors, so they're very used to it, they'll appreciate it, they understand the benefits of it, and they have the ability to implement it because they're tech. All right. Anybody who wants to take 20 seconds, what's one barrier to open collaboration in your company's knowledge system? If you have one or two ideas you want to share, no pressure.
I guess for me, the greatest barrier would be humans.
I can't help you solve that, it's illegal.
How about just the fear of being wrong?
Yeah, for sure. That's a human problem. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So sometimes within an organization, people have to act on knowledge. And if somebody provides information and it's acted on and the outcome is bad, and there's all kinds of bad, then the obvious question is, why did you do it that way? And if the answer is, well, because it was written in the wiki that way, then people are very apprehensive about putting some skin in the game, so to speak, with regards to what information would be acted on. So there's an attribution backlash, I guess, is the idea.
Makes sense.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey. I work at Microsoft. So last year, our CEO, Satya Nadella, announced that we are having a security push, and that became our #1 priority for the company. The other #1 priority is AI, so we have two #1 priorities. But for the security priority, it's caused a lot of lockdowns in our internal knowledge system. So what used to be more open has now become more siloed by policy. This is actually something that we're doing so that the federal government of the US is happy with us, but it's resulted in organizations previously unsiloed being forcibly siloed. And so it's a very challenging barrier to overcome. I'm not sure if that helps at all with your point, but if there are any solutions to address a forced silo, or what we call a tenting, that would be lovely. Thanks.
So I never heard of the CEO of yours, but have him call me. Open source has proven that the more open it is, the more secure it is. So I'm happy to explain it to him if you'd like. Or you may be watching this presentation right now.
Check your phone.
Okay. Benefits and challenges. Some of them you've already raised. Why adopt open source models? Efficiency, innovation, engagement. You get, for the efficiency part, faster access to shared knowledge, and people get used to knowing that the knowledge is available to them, and they know how to get it. For the innovation part, when you have diverse ideas, you get creativity. Engagement, the employees feel empowered. I mean, it really changes the culture, and people feel like they can contribute. Challenges and how to overcome them. So cultural resistance, training for buy-in, that's very hard, but it can be done. Quality control, you have to have clear review standards, and the truth is, like I think Rich mentioned, once you have the quality control with the review standards, over time, people realize the review standards are really not needed. For the governance complexity, just make simple rules. It's good to have handy rules that are easy to remember, very short. More rules means less compliance. All right, we still have time. We can do anybody who has practical steps. Innovation, inspiration. So here are some game-changing steps for knowledge management within a company. Decentralize it so that all employees contribute to a wiki. And this is one example. It's not just for a wiki, as we said. Crowdsourcing the problem solving. So you could have wiki-based innovation boards, wiki-based because you want it to be transparent, but people who are sort of charged with innovating solutions, coming up with ideas, and sharing them with everybody and getting feedback. The knowledge evolution. So to be able to version control wikis with branching, where you may have different people with different ideas, and they may conflict with each other. They can branch them off, develop their ideas, and then whichever one ends up being best, you merge in. And then you have feedback loops where people can comment, people can upvote. As much as possible, the more people involved, the better the information will be. Inspired by open source, an example would be GitHub's issue tracker. Imagine an issue tracker for every problem in the company, or every piece of missing knowledge, or every incorrect knowledge, or anything. Employees can propose and iterate on solutions with the wiki-based innovation boards. I'm not suggesting to use GitHub's issue tracker. There are tools for this that can help you. MediaWiki. All right, I'll give this to you guys. I'm going to group you up. All right, so I guess we'll do groups of 3 or 2 to 3, depending on where you're sitting. I'm giving you guys an assignment. So brainstorm a disruptive idea for your company or for generally company knowledge management. I gave you one idea, maybe a branching wiki or a chorus of voices where users fork and share content. I don't know if that's quite so disruptive or innovative. I'm leaving the rest of that for you. Let's see what you guys can come up with in 3 minutes, and then whichever group would like to share, happy to have you present. All right, go ahead. A disruptive idea, something innovative that will either, let's say, that will vastly improve your company's knowledge management.
Disruptive in a good way.
Disruptive in a good way, yes. Disruptive is almost always good. That looked very productive. I know we haven't usually done this at the MediaWiki conferences. What did you guys think of the disruptive idea that I just had? They're still going. They don't want to stop. Guys, remember me? Anybody want to present their disruptive idea? Yeah, come up.
Mark's disruptive
Okay. Did you guys generally like that process? Is it good? Not good? Okay.
So the marks have a disruptive idea, which is to destroy people's databases that they rely on in the company. So they don't rely on them and then migrate that to another more open, I guess. That's our disruptive.
So basically, forced adoption of a better knowledge management system. That's a great idea. I don't know if management will go for it, but if you can pull it off.
So the Aaron, Yaron, and Rich team came up with the idea of making it possible that you could have a bug tracker, a wish list, and a comment section for all of the organizational processes, so that management could see all the things that people wish the process did better, all the things that they know that it does wrong, and all of the clarifying comments and threaded discussions that people have about the process would be tremendously valuable and wonderfully disruptive.
I think that's an awesome idea. And you see, it kind of, if you take the open source software ideas, it really neatly translates into knowledge as well, into information. All right, next. You guys did such a great job. I'll let you go without that one. So I'll tell you about my disruptive idea. I wanted to think bigger. Pretend it says think. Yeah, that was peer review. So, knowledge ownership. Think about this. The world's employees contribute to a single knowledge repository. I'll expand on this idea a little bit, but we were talking about within a single business, how do you apply open source principles? But the truth is, open source principles don't apply within a single business. Open source software is global, it's worldwide. So why should my business have its own knowledge repository? Why should it be hidden from everybody else? Now, you'll say because it has passwords and client lists and stuff like that. And I agree. Those you probably don't want to make public. However, probably 90% of the knowledge that you have in your company is not only able to be made public, everybody else has it too. We'll see some examples. So why should we all have siloed knowledge repositories? How about all of the businesses contribute to a single knowledge repository similar to a major open source project? Now you'll say we want customization. Oh, you can fork it. You can add your own little customizations, configuration to put your business's name or business type. It's radical, disruptive, think bigger. So crowdsource the problem solving. What happens is when everybody can contribute, big ideas happen. It's not just about seeing the knowledge, but if everybody understands, I can improve how people do sales with my idea. That's just going to go global, and it's going to get peer reviewed, and people like it. They're going to adopt it. People have some big ideas. It creates a culture of sharing among the world's companies. I mentioned the culture of cooperation between people within a company. How about among people in the world who belong to different companies, but they're all working together on improving all of the company's knowledge? And feedback loops, who proposed the ideas, why they got changed, why they're adopted. So you can see this company is doing really well, or this employee at the company. They have great ideas, they have great strategies, they have great policies, and everybody sees who is contributing, who's got things down pat. That could lead to increased revenue. Here's an example of a company that's willing to share their code of conduct. It's a little bit unfair because this company doesn't exist. You can see it at notaclue.wikitech.com. It's a medical clinic called Not a Clue Medical, and they have their wiki open. It's a demonstration because usually I can't, show my clients' knowledge management systems to prospective clients. We created this as sort of a generic, fake demonstration of what you could do with a wiki. Anyway, they have a code of conduct. I would bet your company's code of conduct pretty much looks like this. There's no reason it should be secret, and you'd have a much better code of conduct if all of the companies were working on it together, and it would be cheaper for them instead of paying HR to come up with it. The dress code policy. So here, you can have some differences between companies, different dress codes and different uses, but most of it is probably going to end up being the same. We don't have radically different dress for a marketing agency and Salesforce or something like that. This part would be a little bit customized because it mentions medical clinic. You could do that with the configuration variable and keep everything else the same. This is exactly the same as the one that you have currently in your company's dress code policy. And then for specific requirements, we have clinical staff, which you may not have in your company. Okay, that's a module. You can add it, you can leave it out. This is from a real company, actually. This is from Wikitech. This is our internal communication tools policy. It's an awesome policy, and every company should have that policy. They probably don't, but if they knew about this page, they'd probably adopt it. It outlines how you communicate, which tools you use. So you may not use Jira for your project management, but use some other tool. You can configure all this, and we can have a culture that's shared among companies of how do you use internal tools and for what type of communication. Or this. A very brilliant communication strategy. It's not mine, but I saw it out there on the internet. It was going around, and I was like, this is awesome. So let's expand on this idea. And we did, and we have a very detailed guide of effective communication based on Inigo Montoya's very successful model. I mean, every company would love to have this in their internal knowledge base, I would imagine. Now you'll say, not every company's culture would allow something like this. And I'll say, if everybody shared their knowledge, everybody would have a much better culture and it would allow something like this. All right, now it's your turn. Questions or experiences? Anything you'd like to share?
First, very interesting talk. You talked about the benefits of peer review in open source projects. I was hoping you could touch on how that meshes with the fact that a lot of projects are led by one person or primarily developed by one person who might be labeled the benevolent dictator for life, or even if they don't have that. PHP Code Sniffer is led by Juliet Fulmer. PHP Unit is led by Sebastian Bergman. Symfony, Laravel, Vue.js, and Python all had a benevolent dictator for life. So how does that work in open source?
Excellent question, but I assume you're talking about how do we apply that to knowledge management or just generally in open source?
Just generally in open source.
Okay. Well, some of the examples you mentioned switched away from the benevolent dictator model, so I think that's a partial answer. Doesn't work as well. I think a benevolent dictator is actually an excellent governance as long as he's truly benevolent. And if people are willing to accept that dictator as their dictator because they're truly benevolent, it will work until they don't. And then they will be overthrown or worse, depending on which project, I guess.
So I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about the split between OpenOffice and LibreOffice in the context of a group of users who are unsatisfied with the governance of a pre-existing project. So you were talking about benevolent dictators and the idea that you can fork the code, and so if you don't like the dictator that you're living under, you, in the open source community, you just fork the project and begin a new program of benevolence.
I think that's great, because like I said, that's a motivation to keep things open, to empower people, and to make sure that you have all the open source principles which work, and if you stick to them, people aren't going to leave you, they're not going to fork away, and the fact that they can means that all of the projects are going to run better. And in the knowledge management context, companies have to face it. Like, if you're not running your knowledge management the right way, if you're not running your decision making the right way, then they're going to fork. In other words, a bunch of people are going to leave, either start their own company or just shrink away individually.
So this question, I don't know if it has an answer. It might be more to the what's the barrier, humans or the barrier. But as far as open source, I mean, how do you deal with journals that are paywalled for knowledge sharing, or databases that have, specific scientific information in them, but you have to subscribe to that database? I mean, how do you convince them?
Anybody want to answer that?
Aaron Schwartz. Aaron Schwartz.
Okay.
I'm not Aaron Schwartz. You pull in Aaron Schwartz and you just put a computer in. So for instance, universities have free access to many journal resources. And so I guess this is a Rosa Parks or Aaron Schwartz sort of thing and it was civil disobedience. He put up a server in a closet on the university and he said, I'm going to grab all this information and republish it. It did not end well, but that was a civil disobedience thing.
I see a common thread between those two ideas. Thank you, Mark. All right, we are out of time. Thank you very much.